Welcome, sisters. Thank you for spending time with us, your province leadership team. We appreciate your time, and so we're glad to be with you. Our video today will be structured in that I will lead us in prayer, just a short little part from an LCWR prayer, and then I will reflect on how to live in a COVID world. Amy will follow with mission in a time of pandemic. Fran follows with community in a time of pandemic. And so this is our video for today. Generous listening. A conversation can be a contest or a game of catch with invisible balloons. They bounce between us, growing and shrinking, sometimes floating like cloud medicine balls, and sometimes bowling at us like round anvils. You toss a phrase and understanding blooms like an enemy of colored lights. My mind fireworks with unasked questions. Who is this miracle speaking to me? And who is this miracle listening? What amazingness are we creating? Out of gray matter, a star spark of thought leaps between synapses into the air and pours through gray matter into my heart. How can I not listen generously? All of our lives have changed. Since mid-March, we were asked to isolate ourselves due to COVID-19. We know even now the rampant spread of the virus throughout the United States. We struggle with lack of control by medical professionals that can't get this virus under control. But society has to cooperate too, and we're part of that society. The virus affects every single one of us. We've never been asked to so directly live out daily the relationship of the dear neighbor. We have a new realization, though, that we're not isolated. We're connected to each other. Our daily minor decisions take on social responsibility like no other time in our lived history. We're asked to do small things. Wear a mask. Why? It is shown that it's mitigating infection. It's an effective barrier to disease transmission. If all of us would adopt wearing a mask, it would help plateau the uptick of the virus. And I know of no other sister who is not trying to wear the mask, so thank you. Wash hands often. Well, I think that's been part of our daily action, and so we smile a little bit. But for those of people who have not been washing their hands, thank you. It reduces germs and will help with the control of the virus. And then watch our distance. We all know the 6 feet rule. In conversations, stay apart. But now they say, if we're projecting our voice or if we're singing, it has to be a little bit farther than 6 feet. So we're keeping up with the daily realizations of new knowledge associated with this virus. But part of our vocabulary forever for us will be the idea of social distancing. We must think of each other and the world that we share. The personal cost of being conscious of the dear neighbor is never more evident than now. Our day-by-day restrictions of being homebound and limiting who we can visit, it's getting old. I'm getting tired of it. I don't think I'm abnormal. This has gone way, way too long, and we're not. We don't see it in the distance that it's going to end. Though places where restrictions were lifted, people took advantage of that. They didn't follow the protocols, and now we're backtracking. You know, that doesn't make me feel good. I've been doing my part, and we just have to understand that some people are slower than we are. Sisters, please, please stay strong. This will end, but it won't end soon enough. So, how can we be proactive? We will each seize the day in our own way. Seize the day. We will determine what we can do to take this next day as the blessing that it is. Some will find focus on new and old projects. Those things that we used to love to do when we, okay, can I say when I was a little younger? Okay, I have thoughts of joy in my sewing I used to do and the cross stitching and whatever. Well, I think my sewing and cross stitching days are over, but you never know how long this virus is going to last. But I can still read. I love reading. I can still choose to do things because I have time. I have time to focus in on a deeper prayerful life. And that is enriching. Okay. I can develop new routines. Routines will personally help me, but I'm still working that out, please. I think the important thing is, please, stay strong. Don't give up. Our opening prayer included the idea of generous listening through conversations, the sharing of thoughts that pours through gray matter into our hearts, the miracle of interacting with persons. The miracle. We can share through telephone conversations. We don't need this technology of Zoom calls and WhatsApp or anything like that. If we can use it, good for you. But if you can't, just remember, I don't know of anybody that cannot have some resource to a telephone. Who have you called lately? Were they surprised? Did it make you feel good? Please appreciate the options that we are able to choose. We can have a can-do attitude of not merely surviving, but thriving. We have unexpected opportunities. Not that we don't struggle with some of them, but we have opportunities. It's all in our vocabulary, it's all in our thinking. Just know that no one is alone. Please reach out and be connected. We are community. If you need professional help, seek resources that will help you. We are grounded in love, and you are love, and sister, you are loved. With continued blessings for all of us, I pass this over to Amy.
Thank you, Margaret. So as Margaret said, I want to talk for a couple of minutes about mission in this time of pandemic. The coronavirus pandemic has triggered a global health crisis as countries, rich and poor, seek to respond to the disease as it rolls through their populations. The pandemic has also triggered a global economic crisis as companies and individuals, municipalities and governments seek to put in place responsible restrictions that limit our social and economic activity. This response then has triggered social unrest as left and right clash about differing narratives about the pandemic, about its unequal impact, about the science, and even about the meaning of truth itself. In the wake of all of this chaos, we have the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. It triggered massive international outpouring of righteous indignation. The killing of George Floyd came on the heels of the killings of Black people, including Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others, at the hands of police and armed white nationalists. The sustained and largely peaceful protests against police brutality have been met sometimes with fair and even-handed policing. And at other times, protesters have been met with harsh treatment by local police and by federal agents who unleash military-style weapons on unarmed Americans on US soil in our city streets. And while all of this is going on, our ecological crisis is deepening as environmental protections are being rolled back. And US policy and US agents are holding vulnerable immigrants in inhumane conditions at our borders, violating their human rights and violating our own highest ideals as an American people. This is a dark picture that we see unfolding around us. And it makes my heart weep. And yet it's not all dark. In this time of masks, a lot is being unmasked. This current constellation of crises unmasks the deep inequities that already existed in our society. It unmasks the deep division that already existed in our politics. It unmasks the fragility that already exists in our economy. And it unmasks the gross negligence in our society that deepens the environmental crisis. And it's this cavalier attitude toward the environment that is in part responsible for the pandemic. And while it unmasks these deep divisions and weaknesses within our society, it also unmasks our deep interconnectedness. Dr. Fauci and other public health professionals have become prophets of community health, prophets of the deep connections that we have one with another. We must care for one another because we quite literally hold each other's well-beings in our hands. These crises unmask the global nature of our society, of our politics, of our economy, and of our ecological system. It unmasks the beloved community called for by Dr. King and being birthed on our streets, in our hospitals, and across our country. It has never been more important to lean into our unity as a human community and as a CSJ community. We're being called to inner healing, to hope, to conversion. And we're being called to turn outward in solidarity with people of color, with immigrants, and with the LGBT community. We're called to build the beloved community, to reach out to our dear neighbor, to learn and to live the economics of the Golden Rule. And now Fran will talk about what we're planning and how to respond as a CSJ community.
Well, thank you, Margaret and Amy. Sometimes I think our Margaret teases me about being a linear thinker and being practical. So that's what this part is going to be about, how the community is in this time of pandemic. So I start with picking up a theme that was change is one constant. The question is, how to change? Are we going to change for the good, the common good? Are we going to follow someone's agenda? Another constant in our life for us as humans and sisters and associates is that desire to be connected. What COVID-19 has done is challenged us to learn new ways of connection. So think about the baseball season that began in July with no fans. Schools and parents are struggling with how to open safely. The LCWR, the Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph, and our congregational leadership group have all moved their fall meetings to a virtual Zoom format. And so we were challenged with the fact that we canceled our summer 2020 assembly. So what do we want to do? How do we want to stay connected? What can we do? So from our experience of Zoom meetings, and there have been a lot of them, we have learned that all-day Zoom meetings and Zoom meetings several days in a row, even at half days, are totally exhausting and not necessarily our best way to participate. So rather than a 3-day summer assembly, what we plan to do is offer a series of community meetings over the next couple of months. We want to be flexible, creative, and accountable. So for the flexibility part, we're thinking about offering an afternoon Zoom session one weekday, perhaps every other week or so, with the time period being approximately mid-August through mid-October, so that we have time for different types of meetings. So creativity. The sessions will be different and even formatted differently depending on the group that has planned it and the purpose and goal of that particular session. So here are the components that we're thinking about. And for those of you who like to take notes, this is probably the time that you want a piece of paper. As always, we want to begin and end with prayer. And not just a simple prayer, we're hoping to put together a ritual, sharing of the heart, the way we normally start our assembly. And we also want to end with a ritual that will carry us forward. We want to ground our whole series of meetings in prayer, because that's who we are as Sisters of St. Joseph. The second component I call the accountability reports. And the first one there is finance. So what a perfect example of creativity. Thank you, Mary Fran. So Rather than a Thursday evening report followed by dinner at Carondelet, the financial information will be provided for the sisters only part of our website. You've already received information about this new format. The second accountability report would be the state of the province, in which leadership will share their reflections on this first year and what has been done and accomplished, and probably include some words about various departments and committees. The third accountability piece is the state of the congregation. So we plan to ask John Peters, our congregational leadership liaison, to share her reflections from the perspective of the congregation. Part 3, Sister and Mission Meetings. If you can remember, last year's assembly, summer 2019, we formed 2 committees. Both of these committees have been very active throughout this year, and each of them will have one part of this series of community meetings. As mandated by the 2019 Congregational Chapter, our Governance Discernment Committee is guiding us through a discernment process to choose to stay as a province or envision a new way of being congregation. We participated in one small group session, and they planned a regional session after that. And then the pandemic came, and so we were flexible, and we had a second small group session. So this committee will put together part of this series to continue that discernment process and to eventually lead us to the decision that we need to make as a province. In the spring of 2020, the Mission Agenda Committee, affectionately called MAC, invited us to participate in an immersion experience of another culture and to reflect and share that experience. They too will be part of this series of community meetings. They are planning an interactive mission day with a video presentation and discussion groups on the topic of being anti-racism, white supremacy, that type of thing. In preparation for this mission day, we are asking sisters and associates to share their own experience of racism in a short video clip that will be shown within our Friday CSJ notes. Any sister or associate who would like to make such a video, please contact a member of the MAC committee. The committee will actually be tapping some people on the shoulder to participate in one of these videos. Our hope is that this will give us a mindset to participate fully in that mission day. So this series of community meetings are evolving. You will get more details and more specifics once they come together. Please be patient as we collaborate with various groups, design a more specific timeline, figure out the technology and processes. But please stay connected with us and know we're going to have a great assembly. So in last Sunday's Old Testament reading, God asked Solomon in a dream to ask for a gift. God was pleased that Solomon asked for the gift of an understanding heart, that he may know what is right. Our prayer for each of you and ourselves is to have an understanding heart, a heart that is compassionate to those in need, and a heart that chooses what is right for the common good and the dear neighbor. I will close this video with a quote from Lester Holt as he ends his nightly news broadcast. Please take care of yourself and one another.